When I got those notes from Human Nature 1984,
Yeah.
gotta say, I was intrigued.
No?
Yeah, it's like this whole thing about who we are when no one's watching versus, the face we put on for the world.
It's a classic struggle, isn't it? That push and pull.
Totally. And your notes, they go deep, especially that bit about material possessions and putting on a show. Like, it's that keeping up with the Joneses thing, but way more
Like
layered.
we're drowning in images of success.
Right.
And it's all so materialistic when you really look at it.
Yeah.
And the source, it really gets into the nitty-gritty of that.
Yeah.
Like the financial strain it puts on people.
Right, right.
I mean, can we even be truly free if we're always chasing some lifestyle we can't afford just to impress everyone else?
Oh, man, that hits home. I totally fell for it once. Bought this whole fancy espresso machine. Everyone else had one, right? Use it twice, maybe.
Yeah.
Total impulse buy just for the image of it.
And that's the danger, isn't it?
Yeah.
We get so caught up in looking good, we stray further from who we are, maybe even make some questionable financial choices along the way.
Totally.
And the source made this connection to 1984, which I thought was fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
How the characters, the only place they could truly be themselves
Yeah.
was in that hidden room, remember?
Yes. And that got me thinking, we all need that space, right? That hidden room, whether it's an actual place or just like a mental space where we can just be without all those pressures and expectations.
Right.
But then the question becomes, are we sacrificing too much of ourselves just trying to fit in out there in the world?
That's the trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where's the balance?
You know that part in your notes where you ask if self-preservation trumps love in the end? Man, that one really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's a big question for sure.
It is.
And the source doesn't shy away from it either. Like that couple in 1984, the way they betray each other under pressure from the party.
Right, right.
Brutal example of survival instincts kind of
Right.
overriding everything else.
And then you shared that story about the courtroom, the divorcing couple.
Oh, right.
The way you described it, you could practically feel the resentment in the air,
It was palpable.
It makes you wonder, when things get really real,
Yeah.
can love actually conquer all? Or is that just a nice idea?
Hmm.
Because your source seems to be suggesting that this need for security, especially these days, throws a real wrench into things.
It's true. The world can feel pretty unstable, right?
Say.
Especially on that financial level. And the source seems to be saying that anxiety, it seeps into our relationships, whether we realize it or not.
So are we saying love just goes out the window when money gets tight?
No, it's not that simple. And I don't think the source is saying that at all. It's more like we're trying to find that balance, right? Between passion and practicality.
Oh, okay.
It's like we all need to feel secure. It's a fundamental human thing. But then how much does that factor into who we choose to be with?
It's like that saying, love don't pay the bills, which, okay, sounds cynical on the surface. But maybe there's a grain of truth in there. We can't ignore those practical concerns entirely, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what the source is getting at. It's not about judging anyone's choices,
Yeah.
but about understanding that tension, between what our heart wants and what our head tells us we need.
It's messy, right? Relationships.
Life is messy.
True that.
And I think by looking at it this way, through this lens of emotional needs bumping up against very real pressures, maybe then we can start to make more conscious choices.
Instead of just getting swept up in it all.
Exactly.
Kind of creepy when you think about it, right? How the world of 1984 isn't that far off from how we consume information today.
Yeah, it's there, under the surface.
Very
That whole control thing.
Exactly. The way they manipulate language, the information. It's like how much of our reality is really ours,
Right. It's easy to just accept what we're told, what we see.
Especially these days.
Exactly. And it's like the source mentioned the Ministry of Truth from the book.
Oh, yeah, the Ministry of Truth, which is actually putting out straight up propaganda.
Exactly. And it's like, are we any different with the way algorithms control what we see online? News feeds curated down to the last detail.
It makes you want to just chuck your phone in the ocean and go live in a cabin somewhere.
Right. Go off grid, escape the whole thing.
Totally. And I think that's what the source is getting at with this whole subjective versus objective reality thing.
Yeah, it's huge, right? We're bombarded with so much information from every direction. How do we even begin to figure out what's real anymore?
And whose real are we talking about, Mine, yours, theirs. It gets complicated.
It's layers on layers. And the source, they're not saying they have all the answers, but they're pushing us to at least ask the questions.
Which is a good start, honestly, at this point.
It really is, because if we don't, then who's in control, right? Goes back to that quote from the book, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
Man, that's so real. And it's like the source is urging us, almost begging us to be more skeptical, to not just accept what we're fed.
100%. Think for ourselves.
Think for ourselves. And then that whole part about the printing press, right?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
It was like a turning point, the source argued, because suddenly knowledge, information, it wasn't just in the hands of the powerful few anymore. It could spread. People could form their own opinions based on, something more than just what they were told by the powers that be.
Exactly. And it's like, are we due for that kind of shakeup again in this modern age? Because the access is there, but are we using it right?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because like you said, the information's there, it's everywhere, but it's also being used against us.
100%. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
It is. And I think the source is calling for like a conscious effort, right? To be aware of all the forces at play, the ones trying to influence our thoughts, our choices, everything.
Absolutely. Like step 1, recognize it's happening. Step 2, start to disentangle yourself from it.
Easier said than done, but yeah.
Oh, for sure. But even just starting that journey, starting to question, to dig deeper, that's huge.
Totally agree. And you know what? It all ties back to what we were talking about before, about authenticity, about love, about survival even.
It's all connected.
It is. Because at the end of the day, the source seems to be saying real freedom, real happiness, it comes from that place of self-awareness.
100%. Knowing yourself, knowing your world, and making choices from that place of clarity.
Yes. And that, folks, is what Human Nature 1984 has gotten us thinking about today.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but the good kind of a lot, the kind that sticks with you.
The kind that makes you see things a little differently.
Exactly. So next time you feel that pull, that pressure to be someone you're not, to buy something you don't need, to believe something that just doesn't feel quite right, remember this conversation. Remember to question everything.
Question everything. Do your own digging. And as always, keep those deep thoughts churning. That's all for our deep dive today, folks. Catch you next time.